After learning the basic HTML structure, let's talk about some styling. Let's do some styles to our web page because it looks very primitive and doesn't have any style yet. But let's apply some. But first of all, let me add some attributes to different elements so that we can apply those styles by selecting those attributes. For example, what can we add? Let's start with IDs. For example, to this list element, I want to add an ID. For example, this is my first list element, right? First list item. All right. This is the ID attribute of this element. What else? We can add, for example, title. For example, this is my unordered list. Right. For example, I can add a title here as well. This is my image. What else? Let's put a P here. I want to create an element which has the same attribute, so intentionally let's put another one. Maybe here, or just after the image. This is another text. How does it look like? Okay, I have my second text here. The other attributes didn't make any difference, right? Because they are just attributes. They don't change the context of the elements. So we add title, we add ID. What else I can add? I can add some class names. For example, let's add a class here. Hmm, let's name as li class. I want the other to have the same class as well. Cool. And so after applying all these, I can apply some styles. But how can I apply them? I will create some style rules which will apply to some specific elements, specific text or attributes, right? For example, when I create a style which has to be applied on li class elements, then I expect that style to be applied on this both, right? But for example, when I create another rule, and if I want that rule to be applied on this class, on this element, then I have to define that class in addition to on top of this class already defined. How can I do that? I will just continue adding classes. For example, this is another class, right? This is another class. And let's include this class too, for example, here as well. All right. So what did we do here? We include multiple classes to this element, right? This element belongs to more than one class. Very cool. And what else we can do? Like I remember something from when we inspect the Google page, we saw something like this, right? We saw the structure, the body, head, and inside body we saw all the elements like image or text area or some others. But more than those, we see several div elements, right? What is this? This is just to group some elements. For example, like this one this list and this text. So this field, this area on my page, if I want to group, I just include this inside the division. So this is my division, and even ordered list I can include inside this division. So these all elements belong to this division. For example, this is my area at the bottom of the page. And then what can I do? For example, if I want to apply color partially on the page, not all the page, but only this, then I can apply to this division, right? Because otherwise, what should I do? Like if I apply my style to whole page, not only this area, but the whole page will be colored. But I want a partial color which should be applied only this area. So for this, I can use divisions, or even I can use sections, which we can discuss later. So I think I'm ready. So let's try to do something. For example, as we just discussed, let's try to apply a color here. Of course, it should be a style. So the color style, let's apply, for example, what? Let's do aqua, which is a cool color. So this is the foreground color, right? But maybe background color would be better. So let's apply that. Okay. So I now have this color to this area as a background color. Very cool. So we already see one type of styling, which is called as inline styling. So this is in the same line where I have the element. This is one type. The second type is the external styling, or we have also internal styling as well. Indeed, let's start with internal. So this is the inline styling. Let's add a comment here. Cool. So the second is the internal styling, which means I can create a styling rule which can apply to multiple elements on this page. For this purpose, I have to create my rule in the head field. So as we discussed previously, heads can be used to define some metadata like the title and the icon and some other links. So style is one of those metadata. So I start my style here, and then I cannot close because this expects some context inside, right? Yes. Because I guess if I leave like this, it will warn me not to have some empty styles, because normally I opened the tag and then I closed, but inside there should be some context. For example, now I want to apply. What can we apply? Let's change the font. Font size, for example. Let's define as 10 pixel or a little bit bigger, 30. Okay. I defined a font size, but obviously there is a problem here. What is the problem? Okay, this font size is a rule, right? It's a styling rule, but to which element it will be applied? So I have to define a selector. I have to point which elements I want to apply this rule. So here we go. Now, first I can use the attribute, the tag of the element, and then we can start using attributes. So let's start with the tag. For example, if I want to apply this to paragraph elements, let's select P. All right, all is gone. And then I can define my rule. What happened now? Oh, I don't need this. Okay. So for P paragraph elements, I will apply this. What happened? I can see this P and this P has now bigger fonts, right? Very cool. This is what I expected. And then maybe let's apply this rule only to the second text, not the first one. So what should I do now? If I select only P, then it's applied to all the P's. But I have to be more specific. I don't want the first one. I want the second one only. So what I can do is maybe I can be more specific by saying that I want to locate the P which is under div, right? So let's do it in this way. Div and a right angle bracket will let the code know I want to reach to the direct descendant. For example, if I'm using this right angle bracket, it will point to the direct descendant. If, for example, there is another div here, like this, and then blah 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 blah, so then this will not work. I mean, starting from here, again, it will be a direct descendant of this div. But if I point to the div which has this title, and by using this, if I point to P, then it will not work because there is no P which is direct descendant of this division, right? The division with the title. But since I have it now, it will work this time. And for this, let's apply, for example, color of what? It's background already aqua, so maybe I don't know which would give a good contrast. Let's do it red, something like red. Yeah. Now I specifically point this P, right, which is under the division with title this. Or otherwise, for example, what I could use is, for example, I could use the ID on which list elements I have ID on this first one, right? So let's try to do that. For ID, I can just use a hashtag or pound sign. And what is the ID? This one. Now, what is my rule for this list elements? I don't know, I can apply maybe, let me see what I can apply. Maybe the list style type, right? Okay. List style type. Okay. And I think this is the default, so let's change. For example, let's use a square. Now we can see the first list element is square rather than disk. What was the first one? I think we have to define some custom symbols, but if I leave as is starting with number, and like even, let's try this one. Yeah, this is another type of listing. So these are all list style types. Very cool. I used the hierarchy by selecting the parent and the direct descendant. or I just use the tag, or I just use ID, or I can use attributes, right? For example, what attribute I add? I add some title to different elements. So, for example, what was the title? It was P, so let's add it here. Title is P, and then what I want to apply, for example, let's change the font family. I already see several options. For example, let's use one of them, like impact. Cool. I can already see the elements having this title is now with a different font type, font family. Cool. And finally, I can use the class names, right? I added some classes. For example, this one. I can apply some rules. But now let's do it with the third way of applying styles, which is the external styling. So until now, we see the inline styling like this in the same line, or the internal styling. Let's add the comment here as well. Let's add here. I have an internal styling here. Page. And external styling is pretty much similar to this one, but the advantage of using external styles is, for example, I have this style for this page, right? If have multiple pages for my application, and if I define an external CSS file, which is the styling file, then I can apply to that. I can apply that styling to multiple pages. This is just like creating some custom functions or methods in programming language terminology. So let's try to do that one. So we need an external CSS file. This is my styling file, CSS. And what is CSS? It is the cascade style sheet. So here, now the comments will be written like this. Let's zoom in here. So this is my style CSS file. So CSS is the cascade style sheet. Why do we call it a cascade style? Because in a waterfall approach, it will follow the hierarchy on the web page. For example, we are already defining several rules, right? These are applying to multiple elements, or even sometimes targeting to the same element from different points of application. So the final shape or the style of the element will be decided in a cascade way. Of course, there are different priority rules. For example, it depends on how specifically we are targeting the element as well. But otherwise, if nothing else is defined by the rules, then the cascade way is followed. For example, first of all, the first root element styles is applied, and then the second level, and then going on the next level descendants. So this will be my style file, and we have to somehow point that CSS file, right? Again, it will be, of course, a link. And then we were first defining the relation, right, with rel. The attribute names a relationship. Okay, so this time relationship will be a style sheet. And then we have to define the URL, the location of the file, right? So it will be this one. Cool. Do I need anything else? I think these two properties of the selector is already enough to point our CSS file. So let's see if it applies or not. Now I can again define some rules. For example, what did we not cover yet? The class name. So let's try to cover some classes. So the class name starts with a dot. I have this class here, for example. And then what is my rule? So normally it's too big. Let me zoom out to see the whole page. All right. So for example, we applied some to this, we applied some list style types, right? Let's do the same for the next items here. What can we apply? For example, Armenian circle, decimal, disk, Georgian, square, upper alpha. Okay, let's try this one. Yeah. So I see these two are already applying this style. Okay, what else we can do here? For example, if I want to apply this rule to multiple elements, then what I can do is just list all the elements that I want to target with a comma. For example, this is the first class or the first set of elements, and then I want to apply the same to some others. For example, what else? For example, let's center the text. Before doing this, let's center the text, which can be done by using the text align. Text align, center. Cool. Now it is applied to only this, right? If I want to apply the same to the first text as well, what can I use? The first text was here, so it has this class and this title. Okay, let's use the title. I want to apply this rule to this set of elements which are having this class, or the elements which have the title P. So this is my property of the attribute, and this is the value of the attribute. Cool. Now I see it is already in the center of the page, right? Yes, it is. But I wanted to apply this to these elements and this element only, right? But this is also in the center now. Because why? It also has this title. So what I have to do is I have to be more specific, and I have to be selecting only this one, not this one. Not this one. So how can I exclude this? If I select only title, then it will be also included. But if I select the title and the class additionally, then it will not be selected. So let's add this one as well. How can I do that? Now we call it as chaining. So I just continue by specifying the selectors. This time I'm using the class. You see now this is not included and this is included only. So far, what did we see? We see first inline styling here. And then we see the internal styling. And then this one is pointing to the external styling file, which is the CSS. And how did we select different elements? Like we can use different tags like this, or attributes like this, the title, or ID, or even the hierarchy. We said that this is right angle bracket is pointing to the direct descendant, but if it is not the direct descendant, then we can just use a white space. So it will be still selected. Because even if not direct, this is still a descendant of this division. And finally, we said that we can apply the CSS rule to multiple elements by just listing them with a comma, and we just saw chaining different element attributes or tags, because we can start with the tag of the element. For example, in this case, it was a paragraph element, so we could start with tag and then continue directly without having any uh, other sign. Like this was the hashtag sign was for the IDs, or white space was for the descendants, and dot was for the class. And for chaining, we just directly continue what we want to do. For example, if we just first want to apply the class, then we could still use dot. But first of all, we have to use the tag if we want to do that. Otherwise, even if I don't include that, this is still enough to find the relevant element, which is this one.